First of all, my thanks to UniCredit, who joined Ashoka as a partner to support this summit and worked with us for building this station. My name is Enrica. I have the pleasure to be part of the Venture and Fellowship team at Ashoka, and I will be your facilitator for this session. It's the third day of the summit, and I hope you had a chance to join other sessions during this time. It's really quite a rich summit. We are gathering this powerful and inspiring community of social entrepreneurs, impact professionals, philanthropists, change leaders in education, engaging citizens and young change makers to embark together on a journey towards certainty, which is also the title of this summit, certainty driven by solutions to the most pressing social issues of our time. So thanks for joining us. I'm also happy to introduce you to Eleonora, my colleague from Ashoka, Italy, that will help us through the sessions and will collect your questions. Please, Eleonora, would you like to just tell?
Enrica, hello everyone, welcome to this session. My name is Eleonora. I will take care of the technical aspects of this panel. And as you can see, we have a chat on the right side of the platform, and feel free to use it to introduce yourself, share your insights, and also to ask questions of our panelists.
Thank you. So we have a super rich panel. We have 6 amazing women with us, and I'm happy to introduce them to you. First of all, Paola Profeta, which is Professor of Public Economics at Bocconi University in Milan. Laura Penna, which is Head of Group Social Impact Banking in UniCredit. Eleonora Voltolina, Ashoka Fellow and founder of Repubblica degli Stagisti, which is an organization who's taking care of the right of young people entering the labor world. Julie Murat, who is the co-founder of Bridge for Billion, which is an organization based in Spain and who's working to democratize access to entrepreneurial activity. Perrine Chopper, founder of Shades Tours, which is an organization that organizes tours and activities with homeless people in Vienna. And Veronica Merckx, who's the founder of Navigaya, and she supports and inspires especially people in transition phases of their life. So I am happy now to leave the floor to Paola Profeta, which she'll give us a few insights and data and some features about the situation in Europe of women, female entrepreneurship, and needs and perspective. So please, Laura, the floor is yours. Paola, sorry.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you very much for this introduction. And I would like to share some data and information for you in order to introduce the discussion and the panel. So first of all, as you probably already know, we have huge gender gaps, which are still a reality in our countries. So the gender gaps are basically not closed in any place in the world. According to the World Economic Forum, the Global Gender Gap Index signals the presence of gender gaps still very high, in particular in the economic dimension. So only 58% of the gender gap in economic dimension has been closed around the world, and in political participation and empowerment of women in politics, where actually the situation is even worse because only 23% of the gap has closed. Obviously, there are also high heterogeneities across countries. So there are countries which have progressed much more than others, especially in the last decades. So in this graph, which I call employment, you see male and female employment rates in Europe, and the green bullet refers to male, while the yellow one to female. And actually, you see that in every place, in every country, the male employment rate is higher than the female one. Obviously, there are differences here. So you see the gap much larger in some countries. For example, even in Italy, it's quite high, and in others, it's much closer. But there are strong differences, and everywhere in Europe, male employment rate is larger than female employment rates. The similar situation is found when you look at entrepreneurship. So here we have data which we are most interested in our panel, and these are data for OECD countries. These are quite recent data, where actually again you see men versus women entrepreneurs, which are defined as a self-employed with employees. There are different definitions, but this is the one where OECD agree on. And you find in all countries the bullet corresponds to men, while the square correspond to women, and actually the difference here is even larger than what we have seen for employment rates. So basically, it suggests that the percentage of women in employment, women who are entrepreneurs in employment, is much lower than the one related to men, and differences are larger across the different countries. So we have other indicators of gender gaps, in particular in the labor market and in what we call the decision-making position, which may be particularly relevant when we talk about changement, when you talk about changes and leading the change. And here, for example, I tell you this graph represents the share of women on boards of big companies, which actually has increased a lot in the last few years, but still, even in this case, there are large differences between men and women, where women are more or less in all countries below 30%. Although in this situation, in this particular aspect, we have seen a lot of progress in the last decade, especially because of the introduction of quotas system, board gender quota system in many countries. So the natural question is why? Why do we observe gender gaps in the labor market, and why do we observe these differences between male and women in all dimensions related to work, to employment, entrepreneurs, and top-making position? And actually, the answer is not easy, because obviously this is a very difficult phenomenon where there are several components which play a role. So I try to summarize here the main aspects, but of course then I tell you that, of course, you may want to know more about this. So one of the reasons, for example, may relate to education, but actually education is now not an issue anymore, because in all countries which I have considered previously, women are more educated than men. Of course, there are differences with respect to disciplines. For example, there are few women in STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, math, but most of the gaps do not depend on education, where women perform much better than men. So there are other explanations, and one of those is, for example, related to psychological factors or individual traits. So women are more risk averse, and they don't like a competition, and in our world, in current positions, this has become really, in many cases, very tough and too much, which prevents women from reaching the top position. There is, of course, also there are factors related to the family organization, the work, how families share responsibilities with respect to domestic work, with respect to childcare. Here, in many countries, this is mainly responsibility of women. It's not shared with men. And in countries where this is the roles are more traditional, traditionally, and so responsibilities in domestic care and childcare are not shared between the two partners, the gaps are larger. So the role of man is also particularly important to be involved in this leading the change. And then this reminds us about cultural explanation or historical explanations. So some of those factors are really persistent in our society, and it's very difficult to change because it depends on the traditional organization of the family, because it depends on stereotypes, on cultural bias, which are very well established in our societies. There are issues also related to discrimination or selection from the demand side, so from the firm side, in particular related to maternity, related to the role of women as mothers, which are actually a part of the population, of the women population, which experience higher gaps with respect to the rest of women. But of course, all these factors, which may have something that we call both a nature and a nurture explanation, so both differences between men and women, which belong to their different way of being in terms of biology, but also, and most importantly, on their nurture, so on the way they build their capacity, on the way they interact on the labor market, on the context, on the situation, on the culture, on the family organization, on the firm's capacity to promote gender equality. So all these factors which produce gender gaps, as I told you, not only in education, but in particular on the labor market and also in the political arena, all these factors may be changed through policies, politics, interventions. So the role of policy is particularly important, not only as policies are done by policymakers, but also within the firms. So ways to change the current situations. So another part, so why is that very important? Because when women work and when gender gaps are reduced and gender equality is improved, we know that this is not only a matter of equality or equal rights and opportunities, but it's also a very good investment for the economy. It corresponds to a higher GDP. All international organizations have estimated an increase in GDP where gender equality increases. It means higher fertility rates, which are also another important part of the story in our current societies and economies, which are experiencing a fall in fertility rates. And it also means sustainable growth. So the change towards gender equality is one of the main chapters for a sustainable society and economy. When women lead the change, we also have additional benefits, which do not reduce to simple increase of GDP and creation of, driving forces for growth of the economy and society, but also other characteristics, other important parts, which I here try to summarize like in 3 major categories. So when women lead the change, what we will have is a better selection, because women are as well educated and competent and talented than men, which means that when we exploit 100% of our talents, of course, the selection is going to be much better than when we exploit only 50%, which correspond to the share of men. So the result, the outcome is, of course, much better. And not only women, but also men are better selected when women are taken into account in what we can call a competition or in general a selection process. Of course, this means that when women lead the change, there is also incentive for other women to join the process and at the end give the final outcome. There is also a lot of literature which exploits the benefits in terms of outcomes or performance. Women leading the change means better performance for firms, for sustainable growth, for the agenda and public policies. And finally, there are also characteristics related to the style of leadership. The style of leadership of women is an issue and the value per se, because it's interpersonal oriented, it's future oriented, it's innovative, and it corresponds to several characteristics which I here right, like risk aversion, moderate competition, negotiation, altruism, long-term horizon, a focused networking, which at the end are going to be beneficial, of course, not for women, but for the entire system, the economy, the society, the organization themselves. So what happened with the COVID? Of course, the world has changed since the pandemic. And we here are in a particularly relevant and problematic moment and period, which has been called the she session. So women are more affected than men by the pandemic on the labor market. And this is why in this moment, we really need to be particularly concerned and particularly careful. Why is that? Because women are more vulnerable on the labor market. They are employed in sectors which are experiencing a serious crisis, but also because of family responsibilities, which have increased during the lockdown. And according to our studies, which I show you a simple graph here in this slide, the share of individuals who have increased their work at home among couples when both partners are working at distance. In Italy, for example, this graph shows that most of the childcare and the housework has been burned additional during the lockdown is responsibility of women, and thus is going to exaggerate the burden of women, which is one of the of our problems, because it's one of the driver of gender gaps, which we would like to reduce. But at the same time, I also have to tell you that women leaders, so to go to our second, let's say, way of thinking about the issue, women leaders seem to perform better during this pandemic. I here just report a government response in different countries led by men or by women. And in this graph, you see this government response index, which is constructed by Oxford Studies, which you see that this index is larger, is higher, so it's a better performance for countries led by women with respect to those led by men. So to conclude, I would like to tell you that gender equality, as I said, it's not only an issue of opportunities, but it's a real issue of changing the world in a sense which is more inclusive, but it's also better performance, but it's also better outcomes. And this gender equality passes through more employment for women, more equality in employment, in entrepreneurs, and in decision-making position. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paola. This was super interesting. And I think you really gave us a frame for keep going with our conversation today. It was really, really interesting and helpful and full of insight. So thanks a lot for sharing. I would like now to give the floor to Laura Penna. Laura is head of Group Social Impact Banking for UniCredit. And she takes care of this program, which aim is to identify, finance, and promote people and enterprises that have a positive social impact. So please, Laura, the floor is yours, and you can tell us about the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I think that we believe that today, more than ever, there is a warning trend that risks putting the role of women in society back by decades as a result of ongoing pandemic and its negative impact on female employment. And this happened for different reasons that are was previously explained by Professor Profeta. I think that European local government should play a big role on this, but also it's necessary that the different companies play a role on this part in supporting female entrepreneurs and also businesses aiming at helping women and families. In social impact banking, we want to offer concrete initiatives, and we are now launching a couple of these that I want to share with you. First of all, we play and we offer inclusive and discounted finance for business women that want to start up new enterprises and want to make it grow. We offer microcredit till 50,000 euro. And we also support this entrepreneur with a network of social partners that can support them in the definition of business idea. We offer them digital tool to learn how to start up a new business, on how to do a business plan. And after the financing, these women could receive also free tutorship for more than 1 year, thanks to our association of volunteers named Unigens. Second, we support profit and non-profit companies that provide welfare, health, and educational services and can generate a concrete results. In addition, we want to finance all the projects or the various enterprises that are investing in provide welfare services to their employees and their family. To all of them, we offer social impact financing as a convenient condition, but we also provide training, we share successful experience, we build visibility, and we recognize a donation till 20,000 euro when the social target of these enterprises are reached. One example of our work is with an Ashoka fellow, Riccardo Zezza, and a company like Feed that started from a personal situation and grew into a business to support mothers in taking the learnings from childcare and putting into practice at work. Riccardo has continued to build new and valuable training courses, and today she's not only our customer of social impact banking, but also supplier to UniCredit, because one of her courses has been included in our employee learning catalog. So just few words about some figures. We are present in 11 countries. In the last 3 years, we reached 4,200 beneficiaries through microcredit and impact financing. We disbursed more than 180 millions. And we reach more than 50,000 young and disadvantaged people, providing a different kind of education. More broadly, at UniCredit, we also firmly believe in diversity, that is a key strength. And recently we promoted, at the beginning of November, the UniCredit Bootcamp in Tel Aviv, in which we supported 20 women entrepreneurs in a full immersion of the Israeli innovation ecosystem. And we launched the second edition in October of the group-wide Diversity and Inclusion Week in order to raise further awareness and generate discussion on this topic. But as Ashoka says, in order to have a systemic impact, we still need to do more. So we need to have a joint scalable project as well as an ecosystem collaborating on this goal. And for UniCredit, this is not only a hope and our wish, but we continue to commit ourselves to do more, working with all our stakeholders together to achieve a greater and concrete and measurable impact on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thanks for embarking with us on this change maker journey for UniCredit. And I would like now to give the floor and call on stage Eleonora Voltolina, which is an Ashoka Fellow. She's the founder of Repubblica degli Stagisti, and she's an expert on the issue of young entrance to the labor market. So we would like to listen a bit to her experience as social entrepreneur, but also all the aspects that concern the female and the girls that are entering the labor market. So Eleonora, please. You have to unmute yourself.
I thought you were unmuting me. Now, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm going back to Professor Profeta's speech, because believe it or not, there's no gender gap in internship, which is the main focus of my work and my web magazine. So data shows that there's equity in internship opportunities, both in terms of sheer numbers and considering the recruiting rate after an internship. What I'm saying is that unlike the regular labor market, the internship market is surprisingly girl-friendly. For instance, in Italy, the percentage distribution of male and female interns has always been, in the last few years, around 50-50 or 49-51. And the same goes for the chances of being hired. There's apparently no disadvantage in being a girl or a woman in the internship universe. This is not surprising too. Girls score better grades at school and at university. They graduate faster and with higher grades than boys. So they're valuable. And they're not likely to have children. Not yet, at least. Incidentally, the average age of first-time mothers in Italy is 31, 32. That's the reason why, if you're recruiting interns, you're not going to have to worry about pregnancies. And that's a huge factor when it comes to choosing a candidate for a position. So we can safely consider that this factor is not on the first line when we speak about internships. But there's a couple of buts. First of all, it is true that internship is a strange oasis where girls and women find equal opportunities. It is also true that internships undeniably are the very bottom step of the labor market. Interns still can be unpaid, even if in Italy we have the unpaid internship issue quite under control, thanks to Repubblica degli Stagisti, mainly. And we fought and obtained laws that prohibit them, at least when the internships take place after school or graduation. And even if they're paid, they're usually underpaid. In Italy, the minimum wage of interns is a regional issue. So it is set at a regional level. And it spans from 300 euro per month, for example, in Sicily, to 800 euros per month, for example, in Latium. Furthermore, internships give no right to social insurance contribution or sick leave or holiday pay. It is, as I said, the very bottom step. No wonder that at this step, we can finally find equality. Also, young girls still report being asked extremely private questions during work interviews. So let's say that if internship is this strange oasis I was talking about, every further step in the labor market is not. In 10 and more years of activity, my web magazine received a lot of stories about questions such, who are you living with? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you plan to have kids? And yes, we could point out that there's laws against this kind of job interview questions. We could say it is illegal to ask this question. It is. But we all know that when it comes down to your word against mine, and even if you're right, even if you manage to prove that I asked you this and that, the fact is you're the one who's not gonna get the internship or the work. So yes, just out of the strange oasis, reality waits on girls and women. And finally, the actual existence of this strange oasis is threatened by COVID-19. The last data we collected show that this 50-50 dream is not over, heavily bruised. For instance, in the first quarter of 2020, the last mostly COVID-free quarter, around 69,000 internships were activated in Italy. 51% of these internships were for women, 49% were for men. But then COVID-19 came, and in the second quarter of 2020 in Italy, the number of internships dropped to 27,000. And guess what? Only 46% involved women and 54% involved men. So we are facing a new challenge or threat. How can we protect the strange oasis and keep the internship opportunities equal when it's quite clear that a lot of people still think in 2020 that job is more important to men than to women, or more precisely that in case of job shortage, men should be hired first? Now, one could say, if they're not hired, women could build their jobs by themselves, become a startup. Of course they could. But this then doesn't happen so often. On the roughly 7,500 innovative startups registered in Italy at the end of 2017, for instance, just 15% was mainly led by women. A lot could be said about the reason: lack of self-confidence, lack of support, not only from banks, but also from the first FFF circle, culture. I'm not gonna dwell on it. I did create my own web magazine, my own company, but I learned that it matters, yes, for I can tell my story and maybe some girl or woman could find it resonating, but one's personal experience will not solve the entire problem. So we gotta worry about what's going on in the labor market on every level, even the very bottom level, and be ready to fight for what we achieved in the last few decades. And if I may say something more, I would say that now is the moment to hire more women, hire more female interns. So let's do, all of us could do our part in this sad game, and to prevent women to suffer, to be the main victims of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eleonora. This is I still see the connection among all the insights that our speakers are giving us today as a super interesting conversation. And I would like to handle it now to Julie Murat. She is co-founder at Bridge for Billions. She is French, but based in Spain. She traveled all around the world during her life. She is very young, and Bridge for Billion is an organization that works to democratize access to entrepreneurial activity. So, Julie, I would like to give you the floor and to listen to you and to your experience in supporting women and their entrepreneurship journey.
Thank you so much, Enrica. Very happy to be here. Hello, everyone. So yes, my name is Julie. I run Bridge for Billions. As was mentioned, we are a global ecosystem of entrepreneurship programs that are completely remote and that provide entrepreneurs with the right mindset, the right tools, the mentorship, the community in order to really launch a business and succeed. And in the past 5 years, we've supported 717 female entrepreneurs from 60 different countries. So it's accessible from anywhere in the world. That's 46% of the total number of entrepreneurs we've supported. We work very hard to bring that number to 50 and have a perfect gender balance. And the key metric that we measure is how many of those women are still in business 2 years after they've completed the program. And today we're proud to have 69% of them that are still active 2 years after. But this is not a given at all, because I wanted to start by saying that there is a huge gender divide in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And actually, most mainstream support programs for entrepreneurs, they're located in big cities, as you know, so that already excludes anyone that lives in a smaller town, in a rural area. And there is also a bias in the sense that most people that go through those very competitive selection process to join an incubator or an accelerator end up being people that already had access to the right education, to the right resources, that are typically male, white, with an MBA in their pocket. So this is a big problem that we're trying to tackle. And it's very interesting what Eleonora was sharing about. It's very important to support women at the beginning of their professional career, because you can think of entrepreneurship support as a funnel. So at the beginning, you have a lot of actors that help people in the idea stage, so helping them with the confidence, with the initial idea, then people that help in incubation, then people that help in acceleration. And since this is a funnel, the earlier you overcome the discrimination barriers, the better it will be for the women and for society. Because if you wait too long and if you launch a program that is for, I don't know, 10 women that already are making a lot of revenue and already have made it in a way, then you are creating a system where you're helping people that already on their own were able to overcome a lot of huge barriers. And the earlier you go, the more you're able to really make that democratic. So this is why we work in the incubation stage, and we work with such early stage founders. And so diversity in itself is a huge issue. But another bigger issue that we see is that in the end, when you think of it, entrepreneurs innovate, right? And they innovate by solving problems that they understand, and they work for people similar to them, for beneficiaries they understand. So then if you only support people that had access to resources or that typically male, you will only create solutions for similar groups of people. So that has a huge influence in the kind of innovation that we're creating in this society. And sometimes I take the example of scissors. Scissors have been designed for people that are right-handed because most of us are right-handed. Well, if you design a program for the mainstream, then it will, like, if you accept people in a program that are the dominant, I would say, then you only also create solutions for that group of people. So this is really important. And by that, I wanted to insist on the fact that we don't only crafted a selection process that is accessible for women, but we really took an intersectional approach, thinking of gender as one factor, but also location, and including people that are in rural areas, and also race, including people that maybe were discriminated against in other programs. So this is what created an inclusive selection process for your program looks like. You need to take into account many, many more factors than just gender. So this is for the accessibility part. And then the second part that we work on very hard is the program itself. So it needs to adapt to the reality of women, and it needs to provide that flexibility. So with our online program, women can work at any time of the day, so they can completely adapt to their agenda. And I remember a story of one of our alumni, Eugenia Gargallo. She's in Barcelona. And she was saying, like, oh, wow, this is great that I can work at any time because I just put the kids to bed and then I connect to the online incubation and I work at the time that is more convenient for me. So I think this is also a story about when you have very rigid timelines and very rigid times, you're not adapting to different life realities of people with kids, people with families, with a lot of different obligations. And then the second part that we work on is having a relatable mentor. So someone that you can really work with and that will understand your day-to-day and your reality. And most programs out there, what they do is that they ask the entrepreneur, what are your needs? Then they look at the mentor's LinkedIn profile and they try to match that, which can work. But what we decided to do is to put at the front the human connection. So we have a matching process in which entrepreneurs during 2 weeks, they meet different people. It's a bit like Tinder, a bit like dating. So you meet different people, no commitment, and then you choose from all the people you met who you would like to continue with as your mentor. And this is extremely important because then you create that trust and that bond and you're able to better work together. So yes, I could go on a lot, but I want to hear from the other speakers, so I will leave it here. And I'm very happy to share more about the topic of gender. Thank you, Enrica.
Thank you very much. It was great. During this summit, we've been talking a lot around bias on the technical side of the internet with our new fellow Gemma Golden, that is the founder of Ethicas, that is highlighting how also algorithms have bias and how like programs are basically shaped for men and for young white men. So thanks a lot for sharing the experience and for your opinion and how you are managed to be more inclusive. So I would like to now introduce Perrine Schober from Austria. She is the founder of Shape Tours, and they organize tours and activities with homeless people in Vienna. And I would like to hear her experience and the biggest challenges that she is facing as a female entrepreneur. So please, Perrine.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to anyone who's listening. Exactly, my name is Perrine, and I'm the founder of Shades Tours. Shades Tours was founded in 2015, offering social political education that we disguise as tours on 3 different topics. On the topic of poverty and homelessness, which is guided by homeless people, drugs and addictions, which is guided by former drug addicts, and refuge and integration, guided by refugees. Now, we are the only company in Austria that's actively employing homeless people, refugees, and former drug addicts. To say that we're active in Vienna, and since last year in Graz, in the south of Austria. Now, before I start explaining the challenges that I have had and faced, I want to say that I come from a very privileged background. I was able to go to school. I was able to go to university. I had my first work experiences. I come from a loving and supporting family. That just to put that into right perspective. When 2014, I actually quit my job and felt that I was needing a different kind of job. I was wondering which kind of job I would fit and suit me best for my personality. So a very egoistic approach. I come from a family that is loving and supporting. They're all employees. So the factor of that entrepreneurial sense was never integrated into my education or into my proximity of my family side. So when I told them that I found an idea that I liked, that I was curious about, and that I knew that I was able to do, my family was not that acceptant. So I am the youngest daughter. I was back then in my early 30s. I was disrupting the career path that I already had. This was very strange, sounded very strange to my family. So I think one of the first challenges that I had was family acceptance of the fact that I would become self-employed and an entrepreneur. Then the next thing, of course, was, as I said, I worked with homeless people. It is social. It is something that you don't do money with. So this preconception of not understanding that this could be a business and this could become my source of income was not present to my family. They saw it, okay, well, you can do that. You can do it as a hobby. You can help poor people if you want, but do it as a hobby. Go and get an honest job where you get at the end of the month a salary. And I think a lot of people, male and female, have exactly that preconception when they think about creating and working for a social business. In addition, what I then had was that when I started the company, I also had a new relationship. So I got a little bit troubled by putting all my effort, all my energy into my baby company, and had then, of course, difficulties in doing the role of playing the role of a girlfriend in love, and giving all the time and energy that a young relationship also needs and requires. I think these were my first biggest challenge as a female entrepreneur. On the other hand, I also must admit that I think being a female entrepreneur gave me also a lot of benefits in the work that I do. I think it is first with the work with my employees, with my guides, with my homeless, refugee, or drug addicts. They need the compassion, they need to also be able to tell their stories without feeling ashamed. And perhaps that would be a little bit different if I were to be a man. If another man tells me his biggest defeat in life. So the ego of my employees might not be that's prohibited or as a constraint. I also have employees or had employees in Graz who was doing the project down there. She was a mother of two and the wife. And last year, when they were in a secure position, she showed that she wanted to become self-employed. So she overtook Shade Stores in Graz and all the operations, but soon felt that she was twizzled in between. That the work requires also work on weekends, where it's actually when you have the children in your house. Her husband just undertook a bigger job challenge, so that actually made them earn more. So she had to withdraw a little bit. It even got more difficult for her when the pandemic arose, because her husband is a big asthmatic. So her first, when they talked, they said like, okay, in case that he should suffer from COVID, he might not survive it. So it was on her shoulders, all that, to see, okay, how am I, in case that he dies, how am I going to support the family? And it's not with a newly social business that I will be able to pay all the debts that we have, all the different I need stability. So what she did was then that she very sadly had to give up Shade Stores and her role in the company and go back to the employment that she had before in order to create stability during the pandemic season. Yes, I think these were the first challenges, just to present from different entrepreneurial sides.
Thank you very much for sharing. Thanks a lot for sharing the experience, and also for giving us a bit of an overview of the work you're doing. So I would like to just say to our audience that it's possible to ask questions to our speakers with the chat on Swapcard. There is a tab that you can click and it's question, and we have a few minutes left after Veronica, which is our last speaker today. Veronica is Veronica Merks. She is from Germany, and she is the founder of Navigaya Journeys, which support and inspire especially people in transition phases on their inner journeys. And we would really like to listen to you, and how was your journey as a female change maker so far, and how you think that being a woman impacted your journey. So please, Veronica.
Yeah, thank you so much for this introduction and having the opportunity to be part of this session. I found this session very interesting because, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it before, if it had made a difference if I was a man to go on this journey, because I really connected to what you, Perrine, said, because I also grew up like in a very loving and protected family, had a lot of opportunities, traveled around the world by myself in areas where I didn't really tell my parents everything what I've experienced on my travel journeys. So I always felt very privileged. And that's why I find this very interesting to reflect upon my journey and to think, okay, how would it have been different maybe if I was a man? And to start with my journey, when I came back after this travel journey, I really wanted to connect the topics of responsible and conscious traveling, personal development, and supporting especially young people in transition phases of life, because in our education system, at least in Germany, there are only like a few approaches that really support these young people in these gap times in life. And I really wanted this whole entrepreneurial process to be a journey by itself. That was my goal. I somehow achieved this goal because it was really, yeah, a journey with a lot of ups and downs. And looking back, I think what I did was that I took a very intuitive and emotional decision. Like, it was not really logical, maybe, for also a lot of people around me, including like family and also friends, my surroundings. And I also had a lot of like complex ideas. So maybe this is also something we as women can bring into the world. Not that men don't think in a complex way. That's not what I want to say, but really like this holistic approach, which I wanted to do, which was an advantage or like a positive aspect of what I wanted to bring into the world. But it was, I think, at the same time, my big challenge, because thinking in a very complex way, wanting to have something really deep, creating safe spaces where like emotional and psychological topics can come up, brings a lot of complexity, which isn't understood by everyone. And also like this funding issue was actually like really my biggest challenge, because I've always been surrounded by a lot of women in the social sector, where money didn't really play such a big role, where we all, put a lot of time. And what I realized was that it's so difficult for me to put a price on my work. And this is also deeply connected to my, to my self-confidence, to like having a lot of doubts, to think, okay, is this really meaningful what I'm doing? Does this really matter? Can this change something in our society? So I think I think there were less people around me that disencouraged me than having all my voices, my inner parts within me that tried to disencourage me and tried to tell me that it's not worth what I'm doing. So like these doubts connected with, can I actually put money on what I'm doing? I mean, it's social. I do something for schools. I do something for young people. So I can't really get money for that. I think this was really, big struggle for me. And then also connected with complex thoughts is this aspect of wanting too much at the same time, like wanting to change a lot of things at the same time, being only one person in the beginning and trying to do several projects at the same time. And this is maybe really something that is connected to us women, at least for me. And now I'm realizing that it wasn't only me and my personality, but maybe it was really a factor of being a woman. And also like this thing of thinking of the project as a baby. I really realized that. I mean, I'm in a time where I could where I'm thinking about having a family. And at the same time, I realized for a long time, thinking of my project as my baby makes it more difficult to create a team, because I'm so attached to it that it's difficult for other people to step in. So I really see now like the positive aspects of being a woman with the empathetic side, really an intuitive approach. And at the same time, I think, and that will be my last sentence, there's a big need of also psychological support, maybe especially for women, really creating these safe spaces where these topics can come up, because I would say I reflected a lot about my journey, but I didn't take this aspect of being a woman into my reflection. And I think this could be a very valuable space we can create for women on their journeys. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech and your intervention and your talk about your experience. So we have about 6 minutes left, and there are a couple of questions from the chat that I would like to share with you, and especially this one that is around the narrative and how can we define a new narrative to advocate for gender equality. So this is also something that we could think about in a systemic change. I think that everybody of you is working in this direction, but I would like maybe to ask to Laura again how also UniCredit is working to change this narrative.
It's a very good question. I think that let me say, diversity is really a value, because I think that, as Professor Profeta explained, diversity produce better results, because we introduce a better selection and so on. So I think that there is a value in having women at work, and the value is not just for women, but for the society. And I'm strongly convinced that maybe it's not strong enough storytelling, but I think that we need to share the concept that we cannot just leverage on half of the population, and inclusive work is something that creates value for the person, but also for the entire society.
Thank you. So I have this other question, which is very interesting. So COVID could enlarge the existing gap between those women working in high skills employment and those working in low skills employment. How could we face this negative outcome of the crisis? Maybe Paola, I know that you have to leave, but if you could give us a very short answer, I will appreciate it.
That's really an issue, and it's a very good question. It's not only an issue related to women, because actually COVID is enlarging inequality in general. So it's difficult. And how could we face this negative outcome? Of course, we need to invest resources as government in order to reduce inequality, to fight against inequality, to reduce poverty, etc. It's not only the government can do this, but of course also public intervention is particularly important, but we know that we can all contribute, firms, companies, and the private sector. So this is a clear issue, not only for women, as I said. For women, there is a particularly disadvantage, an additional disadvantage. So women of low skills employment may be particularly affected, and this is an issue which requires a lot of attention and a lot of of also money to be invested in this direction.
Thank you very much. We have a very last minute for another question. So I was wondering if Julie could answer to this one. How can we go from a single cases as Bridge for Billions? You just told us how it is working to be more inclusive for all the people that have different needs. How can we embark this for more people so that we can generate a systemic improvement?
I think it's really key to have all actors from the ecosystem working together. Sometimes we say the ecosystem is a star with 5 points. So you have companies, you have investment funds, you have universities, you have foundations, you have governments, and all those actors need to work together to really generate systemic change. And that's what we're trying to do, also building cross public-private partnerships in order to reach really a bigger change.
Thank you so much to everybody. I think we got to the end of our session. It was very inspiring and really full of insights from all of you. And I really, really thank you so much, everyone who took the time to join us in the conversation, taking the time to think about this issue, and also working on all levels to empower women, because I know we are all going in this direction. So thank you so much, and talk to you soon.